Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Israeli right-wing parties, and did Iran attack an Israeli ship? We're going to be talking about these two different subjects today on the show. We're first going to be starting out with two different representatives from two different right-wing leaning parties here in Israel that will be running in the next Israeli Knesset elections, which is coming up in just a few weeks now, in the month of March. We're going to be speaking with these people, and we're going to be finding out, is there something wrong maybe with Israel's electoral system? Why are we going for our fourth election inside of 2 years? And some politicians now are saying that we may even have to go to a fifth election in another few months because this one will not solve the problem. As it is in the latest polls, I believe that the largest amount of votes that any party is going to get at this time is the Likud, and they're only up to maybe 28, 29 seats out of 120, which means they're going to need at least another 31, 32 other Knesset seats, parties, that make up different parties to join them, which means that they have to wheel and deal and promise ministries to them and give them what they want in order to build a coalition. So we're going to find out about that. Also, the Jerusalem Post reports that Iran is the main suspect behind an attack overnight Thursday on an Israeli-owned cargo vessel that was damaged by a mysterious explosion in the Gulf of Oman. That's just south of Iran. Defense Minister Benny Gantz said this on Saturday. So if Iran's hands are dirty in this, what does that mean? What might Israel's response be? And why is Iran being so bold now when it's been relatively quiet and more covert in its military endeavors the last few years? Could it be the new Biden administration? We're going to find out all of these things when we get back.
The return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel was prophesied in the Bible thousands of years ago and is coming true today. Shalom. Join me, Josh Wander, on Israel Unplugged. Listen in as we delve into the spiritual and physical aspects of the Jewish return to Zion. We'll discuss the biblically mandated, historic, and of course practical understandings of this incredible transition from exile to redemption. That's Israel Unplugged, every Monday on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com.
All right, we're back here at the Tamar, Yonah Show on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. And we're going to be speaking with someone now from a right-wing party here in Israel. He's going to be talking to us about what the right and his party has to offer Israeli citizens. And also, he's going to be talking to us about what needs to change here in Israel, because we're already voting now in our fourth Knesset elections inside of 2 years. And there's even talk now by some politicians that we may have to go to a fifth election. Oh, my goodness. All right. So our guest is Simcha Rothman. He's an Israeli advocate or lawyer, and he's also the co-founder of the Movement for Governability and Democracy. And he published the book, The Party of the Bagatz. That's the Bagatz is Israel's Supreme Court. Rothman is a candidate. He's number 4 on the list of the Religious Zionist Party, or Hatzionut Hadatit, which is headed by Betzalel Smotrich. And of course, in that block is the Otzma Yehudit party led by Itamar Ben-Gvir. And for more information on Simcha Rothman, you can follow him on Facebook or Twitter. Just look him up there. Welcome to the show, Simcha Rothman.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Very, very good to have you on. Okay, so why don't you start out first by telling everybody why you're running for the Knesset?
Okay, so the past 8 years since I founded Meshilut, the Israeli Movement for Governability and Democracy, I was dealing with I would say the major issue that Israel have that's blocking us from having a functioning government. It's also, I think that many people overlook it, but the fact that we are going now into a fourth election has the justice system in Israel has a lot to do with it. Not many people remember that we went to the first election a year ahead of time because the court canceled the ultra-Orthodox draft law 3 times in a row. Meaning every time the Knesset, the elected officials, are finding a solution to one of Israel's major sociological and political questions and problems. What do you do with the ultra-Orthodox? How do you get them into the economy? How do you get them into the army? Every time the Knesset finds a solution, the court cancels it. And we went to election a year ahead of time because of that. And also, you can't forget the Netanyahu's cases that are also a case of criminalizing politics, also creating a chaos in the Israeli political system. So these two issues, together with the high threshold, brought the Israeli system to instability. We're going to a fourth election, so I want to change that. I want to, the major issues that brought me to politics is to try to change the system to bring more separation of powers and checks and balances to the Israeli system, because currently we have none. We have Supreme Court who are self-appointed. We have a Supreme Court who is self-perpetuating himself and taking all the power from the Knesset. So the Knesset has no choice but to dissolve itself in order to try to bring some change. This is the major issue that personally I want to focus. But as a party, we care about the right-wing ideology. We care about the religious Zionist ideology, meaning you need to have a strong Jewish state with Jewish identity in Israel. Of course, you need to have good education, good Jewish education in Israel, and you have to solve those issues that prevent Israel to be a Jewish and democratic state as it should be.
So what would this new type of party system or electoral system, what would it look like?
So first, the major issue, you need to think about changing the election system, but you can't do any change in the system, any fundamental change in the system, when you can't trust the change to actually take place. What we have today, that the court, even as we speak today, the Supreme Court, even although it's a basic law, which is supposed to be part of our Constitution, the basic law that changed the system of forming a government is now sitting in the court waiting for decision. So the major issue you need to build is to build the trust that whatever decision the Knesset takes on those questions will be not touched by unelected officials. So first do no harm. First, get the judges and the legal advisors outside. Take them out of politics and make a definite law saying the last word on legislation has to be for the elected officials in the Knesset. Once you do that, you can try and make some changes. You need to take the threshold down to have the Knesset be more representative of the people, and you might need to add some form of a local
districts
way of choosing candidates, something like what we have in the U.S. or in Britain, but you need to introduce it with the self-confidence of the Knesset that if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, you can change it. And keep the court out of the election system.
Okay, so let me ask you very briefly, if you can answer very briefly, why hasn't the court decided on this? I mean, we're in our fourth elections. We might even go into our fifth. Isn't this one of the most important things that the court should be busying itself with? And do you think it'll pass? That would mean that they would be giving up their own power.
So that's why I don't believe the court. For many years I waited that the court will give up its powers. The court is not going to do that, and this chaos will continue. That's why you need to have a plan of legislation, and the Religious Zionist Party has a plan of legislation to take the power from the court, to have an override mechanism for the Knesset, to change the way judges appointed in Israel, because Israel is very unique in the judges' appointment method. Most democratic countries, the elected officials choose the judges, not self-appointed. And so you need to have certain changes just in order to get the system in motion.
And wouldn't that take a revolution?
I don't think it will take a revolution. It will be a counter-revolution, because that's the way the state of Israel was until 1995. And I don't think Israel was not a democracy until 1995. So it's maybe you can call it a revolution, but it's a counter-revolution. It's bringing back the sanity to the system that was destroyed by super activist judges.
Okay. All right. In the last 2 minutes that we have, tell us about what your party, the Religious Zionist Party, is going to do for its constituents, the people who vote for it, and also for the rest of Israelis. Okay.
So the major issue that we are dealing with is education. Education is very important for the religious Zionist community. I think also to other communities, as you said, but the religious Zionist average family has a lot of the most per capita expense on education costs, and that's a major issue we're going to deal with. Try to build a better education system for Israel, with more emphasis, of course, on the Jewish identity. And also, the Religious Zionist Party is committed, of course, to Eretz Israel, to the land of Israel, to build settlements, to make the new settlements that are in Yehuda v'Shomron, to make them prosper and thrive. So because there are people there that waiting for many years. They were sent there by the government, and they're waiting for many years to have their houses settled and not be under threat of demolition. And also, as I said, the justice system is a major issue. Another major issue is the immigration. The illegal infiltrators that come to South Tel Aviv is a major issue in Israel. And also, in the past year, more people that came through Chok HaShavut, through the law of return, most of them are not even does not identify themselves as Jews, and that's something that needs to be changed. And you need to have the law of return serve its original purpose, make sure that Israel will always be the house, the place, the home of the Jewish people.
Okay, and very quick, we only have about 60 seconds left. What's your stance on the coronavirus lockdowns, the vaccinations that are coerced on a lot of people that maybe don't want it? Do you believe in lockdowns? Do you believe in all these things?
There is no coercion in Israel for vaccines, but of course, lockdown is a solution that no one wants. No one wants to have more lockdowns, but in order to prevent widespread of the coronavirus, we are getting to that too many times, I would say. But we need to, and I think that the vaccines are the right solution to get out of it. I hope we will not find ourselves with new kinds, with mutations and stuff like and variants that will create the vaccines that will destroy the effectiveness of the vaccine.
All right. Well, if I want to tell our listeners, if anybody wants to follow Simcha Rothman, they can find him on Facebook or on Twitter. In English, his name is spelled Rothman, and in Hebrew, Rotman, Simcha Rothman. And we will link to his Facebook page where on our page where the show is
and
podcasted.
Also on Telegram if you want.
Telegram as well. Very good. All right. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Simcha Rothman, for joining us.
Thank you very, very much.
Good luck in the elections.
Thank you.
All right. When we get back, we're going to be speaking to someone from the Yamina Party, and he's going to be telling us about their platform. We'll be right back, everybody. Don't go anywhere.
Hi, everyone. This is Andrea Siminto from Jerusalem, inviting you to drop everything and join me on my show, Pull Up a Chair. We'll visit this week's quirky stories, meet fabulous guests, and discover my Israel. Together, we'll laugh, shout, and explain the topics that make us say, hey, we've got to talk about that. So get comfortable and pull up a chair with me, Andrea Siminto, every Thursday on Israel News Talk Radio.
All right, we are back here at the Tamar Yonah Show on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. And we're going to be speaking now with another right-wing leaning party, and that is the Yamina Party. Yamina actually in Hebrew does mean right, so it's very interesting. Our guest is Jeremy Sultan. He's a Knesset insider, political and poll analyst at KnessetJeremy.com. And you can find him on Twitter at the Jeremy Man, all one word. And he is now number 16. He's a candidate number 16 on the list of the Yamina Party that is voting, that is running in this election. And welcome to the show, Jeremy Sultan.
Thank you. It's great to be with you, Tamar.
All right. So in the latest polls on television, how many seats do they predict for the Yamina or the, well, what is your party called that's running?
So our list is called Yamina. As you said, it's a right word if you translate it into English. Over the last, I'd say it's been about 3 to 4 weeks since we've submitted our final candidate list, as all the other parties have. And, there's the high and lows. The lowest poll that we've gotten over last month is 10, and the highest we've got is 13, and we've certainly got a lot more 13s than 10s. And we've had also some 11s and 12s. That's the way polls go. You have highs and lows.
Okay. And so, when we vote on the ballots, there's usually the name in tiny letters, and then there's a big letter in Hebrew. Yours is?
Bet.
Bet. Okay. So I'm just going to write that down because we need to know who we're voting for. All right. Bet is the number. That's the letter, actually. And so, in the news, they're talking now that the leader of the Yamina Party, which is Naftali Bennett, said that he will not join a government led by Yesh Atid leader Yair Lapid, who is left, secular. He added that we have no problem with Lapid joining the coalition, but ultimately we will not be part of a left-wing government. So we've heard these things before, except it was with Benny Gantz and the Blue and White Party, who said anyone but Bibi. They would not make a coalition with Bibi. And in the end, he made a coalition with Bibi. And I'm sure that his voters were disappointed. How can your voters be sure that if indeed the left wing gets more seats and they're able to build a government, that Yamina won't sit in that government?
So there's a 3-phase process to choose a prime minister here in Israel. The first part is the Knesset election, where we vote for our parliament or our Congress, our legislative branch of government. In that election, we have 4 parties that are running for prime minister. Naftali Bennett, the leader of my party, Yamina, is one of them. And the other 3 are, of course, the current prime minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. And you have, as you mentioned, Yair Lapid, who's the head of Yesh Atid. And then there's a 4th candidate, Gideon Sa'ar, who just started a new party about 2 months ago. And what we know is that each person in the first phase is running for prime minister, and they're asking to get as much support as they can from the Israeli people in order to be able to form a government. The second phase is in the president's residence. Our president is sort of like the Queen of England, head of state. But what happens is that delegations from the parties that enter the Knesset then go and recommend a candidate for prime minister. We've been very clear that we will recommend, the party Yamina will recommend Naftali Bennett for prime minister, regardless of the number of seats that we get, whether it's what we're getting right now in the polls, if we're getting a little bit more, which is obviously pretty good for me, or if we get less. Regardless, we're going to nominate only Bennett for that position. The third phase is the vote of confidence, because in a parliamentary system, the executive branch, the government, can only work if it has a majority within the legislative branch. And a lot of stuff happens between the second and third phase. That's called horse trading. And your question is regarding what could change from the second to third election. It's a very, very difficult thing to predict, but what you need to go ahead and is put out red lines. One of the things that Naftali Bennett has said very clearly is that he's not boycotting any of the key players, and he's also not being boycotted by any of the key players. That's why we think he has a really good shot at forming a coalition when it comes to that phase. But there have been a lot of campaigns from the right and from various other parties, that, including the left, that are suggesting that in some sort of endgame scenarios, you said there would be a constellation in which we would be the only right-wing fig leaf within a left-wing party. And it was very important for Naftali Bennett to go out and say, out of the possible scenarios, that is something that we will not be a part of. That's something that we cannot live with. We are very much a right-wing party, and we cannot go ahead and enable a left-wing party. And we're fine sitting with Lapid in our coalition. And it wouldn't be the first time, because Netanyahu was very happy to bring Lapid into his coalition back from 2013 to 2015. And we've been very clear that we're willing to accept into our coalition anybody who has been okay for Netanyahu to enter into his coalition over the last number of years.
Okay, let me ask you about your party's platform. People who are looking for something that's traditional or even religious, keeping it a Jewish state, also, right-wing politics, etc. What is your platform exactly for them?
Well, of course, the main issue of this election is COVID, right? It's the coronavirus. And our main agenda definitely is going ahead and dealing with corona, both from a health perspective and an economic perspective. We haven't changed. In fact, we're the same people that we were before. We're still, as I said, rightward. We're Yamina. We're right-wing within our values. We believe that Israel is a Jewish and democratic state. We just realized that after 4 elections in less than 2 years, that we're in a very, very big crisis right now within Israeli society. And our expectation that we're going to be able to go ahead and really be able to execute all of the stuff that we've wanted to do within the right is probably not as high as we would have hoped in previous years. And that also the most pressing need is to be able to deal with the COVID situation. When you have an 18% unemployment across the country, that's something that needs to take precedence and priority over a lot of the other things that are part of our core beliefs, and we want, things that we want to go ahead and move forward on. And we also have to be realistic in terms of the coalitions that we're going to most likely see forming over the next few months after this election on March 23rd. And it's going to be very difficult to be able to get a lot of these things done. And like I said, when you have 4 elections within 2 years on the right-left axis and paradigm, it's quite obvious that for us to be able to actually deal with corona, which is the main priority, we need to be able to form whatever government is possible to at least get that done before we go back to fighting about what we're used to.
Okay, so you brought up the coronavirus and how Israel and all the countries around the world are suffering from that today. And I understand that Bennett's, the leader of your party, his stance on that is very, very strong. I've heard that he said that he would even basically make different districts. And if anybody put the ones that are red which means the most serious cases, put them under a quarantine. Anybody who leaves that, he would even want to put into jail. So what exactly is his stance? He's obviously for the lockdowns. What about vaccinations and forced vaccinations on people who don't want to try an experimental vaccine?
So what you said in terms of the red cities and dealing with them, what we're suggesting is actually 180 degrees. It's a complete opposite, which, that's been the current government, their decision to go ahead and sort of block off red cities. What we say is the other side. And Naftali explains it's like cleaning for Pesach when it comes to chametz. We're experiencing now at the end of Purim, and we're all starting to get used to the part where we have to watch where our chametz is and start getting ready to clean our house. Now, when it comes to Corona, what we think needs to be done is clean the green cities, meaning take a city, have the local leadership who knows their city best, give them the ability to have rapid testing to all of the people within their area, be able to do that 2-3 times within a week, be able to isolate all the people who have Corona, and then be able to make an area that's green. Once the area is green, no one from the red areas can go into the green areas, as opposed to what we've had until now, where you closed off the red areas, but then you'd have people from green areas going into red areas and then bringing it back to the green areas and making them red. What we're saying is like chametz. Let's think of Corona as the chametz. Let's clean city by city. And once we get eventually to the point where we're at the red cities, we'll be in a place where we're much better off. And also the population will see how things are in the green cities. Because the green cities under the Bennett program is not the green cities under Netanyahu. In the green cities, according to Bennett, everything is open. Everyone is able to do whatever it is that they were doing right before Corona.
No masks, no social distancing?
When it comes to the green areas that have 0 cases, we're talking about going back to complete normal in terms of what we were used to beforehand. And you can look at the models of New Zealand and Australia and Taiwan and Singapore and many other countries who've been able to adopt this. Instead of trying to isolate the red cities and expect that that's going to be what deals with the virus, what we're saying is let's treat Corona like chametz, and we'll be able to actually get back to work a lot better. There have been a lot of countries that have gone with this process, and it's worked. It works specifically in places like ours, which are either islands or areas with only one major point of entry and exit. It's very easy to do. When it comes to the airports, you need to have testing.
Okay, Jeremy, we're running out of time, and I want to give you the chance in 10 seconds just to give us your party slogan. Why should people vote for you, the Yamina Party? 10 seconds.
People should vote for Yamina because only Yamina can take Israel out of the current chaos that was caused by the failure of the current leadership. We need a leader be able to go ahead and put Israel to work again, to get us with jobs, in order to be able to create 400,000 new jobs in our new Singapore plan, which will cut the waste within the public area to be able to increase the private sector. Vote Yamina, and we'll get us out of this.
All right, Jeremy Sultan, everybody, thank you for being with us. And when we get back, we're going to be speaking about the attack on an Israeli cargo ship in the Gulf of Oman. Was it Iran?
Are you interested in transforming your life, drawing closer to the Creator, and uncovering the deeper meanings and hidden treasures in the Hebrew Bible?
Then join me, Rav Yitzhak Michelson,
And me, William Hall,
on the Science of Kabbalah, where we are seeking to narrow the gap between what we understand of our physical and spiritual worlds. So make sure to tune in every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Israel time, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, here on Israel News Talk Radio.
Hello, I am Walter Bingham. If you want to hear the news behind the news and the true perspective on world affairs, then the Walter Bingham File is the program for you. We bring you interviews with the movers and shakers, political commentaries, and on-the-spot reports of events as they happen. All here every Tuesday, 4 p.m. Israel time, 9 a.m. Eastern time. And it's all archived on our website. Make it a date.
Well, I don't know if you've been noticing, but there was an attack on an Israeli cargo ship on Thursday night going into Friday. And the question is, what caused the explosion there? Our defense minister, Benny Gantz, says that it was an Iranian attack. Here to find out more about that and why Iran is starting all of a sudden to get very overt and cocky in its actions with Israel and the Middle East and the world. Our guest is Aaron Bronstein. He is a former U.S. Foreign Service officer. He's worked in Washington, Egypt, Tunisia, and Muslim West Africa for 30 years as part of the United States Foreign Service. Today, he heads the Jewish Covenant Alliance at covenantalliance.org. Welcome to the show, Aaron Bronstein.
Thank you very much, Tamar. It's a pleasure to be back on with you, and things are moving very fast now that the new administration in Washington is, one would think, up and running. I just hope they're not running in the wrong direction. The attack on the ship is very much telltale as to what's going on.
Do we know what kind of explosion this was? Was it a missile? Was it a bomb set on the ship by maybe swimmers? Do we know exactly what happened?
No, it's. I think it's still being studied, but there is one or two holes in the ship, and just in the 4:00 news, less than an hour ago, Israel confirmed that it was an attack. Mm-hmm. Okay. Probably the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps of Iran.
All right, so Iran is the main suspect.
All the Ayatollahs' dirty work.
Okay.
But, in terms of the larger picture, the absurdity is that the Biden administration announced that it wants to go back to the original nuclear accord. So defective, and so dangerous for the entire world, for America and for Israel and for the Gulf states. Everyone is under threat from Iran and its megalomaniac, totalitarian intrigue and designs for the world. But so what's happening is each is flexing their muscles. The same time as this attack on the Israeli-owned ship took place, hours, the United States attacked some Iranian-sponsored sites in eastern Syria that had fired on American positions in the area. So the Biden is trying to show that he's not a weakling, he's not a pushover, but he is at the same time sending out signals that he's desperate for a renewed agreement or a return to the old agreement. And that, to the negotiators in the Persian market, that sends a terrible message that
right.
they can ask, you want an agreement with us? Pay for it.
Why do you think
Iran?
That's not
the way to negotiate.
Why do you think Iran started up with this Israeli ship, if they did it?
What? Say that again, please.
What would motivate? I mean, why do you think Iran, if they did it, chose this ship as a target and attacked it? What is it going to gain?
Well, they've been planning and, in fact, implementing various attacks on Israel, mostly unsuccessful so far, because of the assassination of the head of their nuclear program, and months ago. And also to send a message to Biden. The attack on the Israeli ship is not a message to Netanyahu. Netanyahu knows how to deal with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard. It's a message to Biden in saying that we're going to react, and what the new Secretary of State, where I worked for 30 years, has said blatantly that there has to be an agreement. Well, the Iranians hear that. They say, well, pay for it. Now, this gets even worse because the attacks now on Saudi Arabia with regard to the Khashoggi, the Khashoggi murder, is all of a sudden after 2 years coming up and being played by the the Freudian slip by the Biden administration in order to cut Saudi Arabia down to size and maybe even get rid of Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, who's the power broker in Saudi Arabia and in the Gulf, who's behind the Abraham Accords. President Biden gives lip service to the Abraham Accords, but he wants to put Israel and Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states on the defensive so that they will have less clout in attacking and in opposing the nuclear deal that Biden wants. And that's what it's all about. It's all about the nuclear deal.
All right, let me ask you this, Aaron, in the last 4 minutes that we have. How should Israel respond to this? If, again, Iran indeed did this, how should Israel respond?
Well, first, it has to make clear to the world, through maybe interposed parties, that the alliance, the Israel-Gulf alliance, is very much aware of what the Biden administration is doing. I sent last evening, after Shabbat, I sent a letter to the Jerusalem Post in this various sense. It's now on the desk of the letters to the editor. Hopefully either tomorrow or Wednesday, when they print letters, mine will appear. In fact, pointing out everything I said in the introduction now to this issue. The pressure has to be kept on the administration in Washington, making it clear to them that they're treading, that it is treading on very dangerous grounds, and they know that if they push too hard, there can be a reaction of the alliance. I call it the alliance, the Gulf-Israel alliance, to increase the pressure, the physical pressure on Tehran. And Biden doesn't want that. So the attacks on Mohammed bin Salman is all geared to sort of clip his wings, as they say, and to put him on the defensive and maybe even to get rid of him. Why did Biden place a call to the crown, to the king of Saudi Arabia, 85-year-old king of Saudi Arabia, going over the head of the actual government of Saudi Arabia, in order to say to the king that your bin Salman is a danger for the continuation of good U.S.-Saudi relations, and at the same time that Iran is breathing down Saudi Arabia's neck on every single front, in Syria, with Hezbollah, in Yemen, and even the move against the Biden move against the Houthi in Yemen is all part of the same strategy, to put Saudi Arabia on the defensive and hopefully to avoid Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states that have signed with Israel moving away from their opposition to an eventual return of America to the Accord, and to leave Israel isolated. So this entire move against Saudi Arabia is a direct threat to Israel.
Well, let me ask you this, and we only have a minute or so left. Yeah. What should Israel's response be? Should we just suck it up, or should we attack Iran if indeed they are the culprits behind this? What?
Well, that's the last resort. But in the meantime, keep the military pressure on Iran, and especially on the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and on its proxies, on Hezbollah in Syria, to up the ante, to go and then also thereby send the message to Washington that Israel is no pushover, and also to defend the alliance because if Israel stumbles on this geopolitical game board, then the Saudis and the other countries may abandon Israel and go to cut whatever deal they can get with Iran. They don't have Washington on their side.
Well, there are rumors now that Israel and maybe other countries as well are now looking to pass the White House and looking perhaps to China and to Russia for alliances. What do you have to say about that?
I don't think that can work because China and Russia are hoping. It's good you mentioned this.
You only have
China
15 seconds.
And Russia are hoping that Biden will go through with his plans, that Iran will be rehabilitated, and they can move in full force in alliance with Iran. You know, Biden thinks he's going to wean Iran away from China and Russia. It'll be the exact opposite effect.
Interesting.
And Israel has to do its most effective public relations, mostly quietly, in order to point out that Biden is leading America down a path to disaster.
We're going to have to leave it right there. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Aaron Braunstein from the CovenantAlliance.org. Thank you, everybody, for being with us. I'll be here tonight and tomorrow.
If you love Israel News Talk Radio, then you'll love our Facebook page. We keep you up to date on what's happening in Israel, plus little surprise treasures that we don't share on the radio. Go now to follow us on Facebook. Just look for the Israel News Talk Radio Facebook page, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us by clicking on the like button. We post great stuff there that you'll want to share. Israel News Talk Radio on Facebook and Israel News Radio on Twitter.
If you're hearing this message, everyone else can too. Advertise with Israel News Talk Radio and get your message out to people. We'll build a personalized package for you. Contact advertising at IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com.
Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Hey, this is Jake in Anchorage, Alaska, and I love listening to all the super interesting interviews and up-to-date information on what's happening in Israel.
Hello, this is Anna King, originally from London, now living in Israel. And what can I say? Israel News Talk Radio is my cup of tea.
My name is Bhaskar. I'm from India, and I love listening because you get to know the truth and wonderful voices from this lovely country.
Mom! Okay, wait a minute. Hi, this is Chava Dax, and I'm calling for the rolling hills of Ma'ale Adumim, just north of Jerusalem. I always listen to Israel News Talk Radio to get all the latest news and commentary and to keep me up to date every day.
This is Sarah Dax from Ma'ale Adumim, and I'm 12. I wish Israel News Talk Radio was boring so my mom wouldn't listen to it all the time. Mom!
You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
News, opinion, and more. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.